guys, it's Emily, and today I'm here to bring you another recent reads video. I'm here to talk about one book that I finished in March, and then two books that I finished in April. So let's just get right into it. First off, I wanted to talk about the Anne book that I finished in March. I wasn't intending to read an Anne book in March. I was going to take a break for March Mystery Madness, and then the last week of March, I was listening to Bluebird by Attica Locke on audio, and I didn't want to start another mystery when I was already listening to one, so I decided to just go ahead and read my next book in the Anne series, which was Anne's House of Dreams, and of course all of these books are by L.M. Montgomery. Anne's House of Dreams is book number 5 in the series, and in this one, Anne and Gilbert are married at the beginning of the book, and they move to Four Winds, which is a town on Prince Edward Island, across the island from Avonlea, and they are there because Gilbert is taking over his great uncle's medical practice, because his great uncle is retiring. And so we see them move into their house of dreams, we meet their new neighbors, we see their new friends, and we just get to follow them throughout their first 3 years or so of marriage. And I enjoyed this. It was really fun, and it was a really quick read, as all of the Anne books are. I will say that I noticed that it's starting to get repetitive in terms of like side story. So in Anne of Avonlea, Anne of Windy Poplars, and this one, there's a side character that we meet at the beginning of the book that has a tragic story. Something happened in their life that makes their life, quite sad. And we see this in the beginning, and then we see throughout the story their situation, getting, it's like, we just see their situation. And then at the end of the book, in some miraculous way, the situation is resolved in a happy manner. And so it's happened 3 times now, and you can tell that that's like Ellen Montgomery's MO. So it just got a little bit repetitive, in my opinion. And I know Kate Howe recently finished this book as well, and she mentioned that too, that she found it kind of repetitive, and it actually took her like several months to read this book because she felt that it was getting too boring for her. So yeah, overall, this was good. I enjoyed it, and I'm looking forward to continuing on in the series. I then finished in the first week of April, A Widow for 1 Year by John Irving. This is a book that I've had on my TBR since 2014, and I just kept putting it off, and last March I finally picked up a copy at my local half-price book because I was like, I'm never going to read this unless I have my own copy, and I'm forced to read it. And finally, here, a year later, I got to it. So this is about the Cole family, and it starts out by following Ted and Marion Cole, who are a married couple, and they are very unhappily married because before the book starts, their 2 children die in a tragic car accident, and after this accident, they end up having a 3rd child named Ruth. But they are still very unhappy because of some residual, grief and things like that, because of course it's very tragic to lose your children, and they lost them in such a traumatic way at the same time. And so we see the summer of 1958, I believe, the father, Ted Cole, hires an assistant because Ted is a famous children's book writer and he needs some assistance putting together his newest book. He hires an assistant named Eddie O'Hare, and Eddie and Marion actually have an affair over the course of the summer. And the summer of 1958 is very, it's kind of like a turning point for everyone in the family. Ted, Marion, Eddie, and then their daughter Ruth, who is 4 years old at the time. In 1958. And so we just see that summer, we see what happens at the end of the summer when the love affair breaks up, and then it jumps forward to when Ruth is 35, and we see her relationship with her parents, we see her relationship with Eddie, and we just follow her life. Ruth is also a writer, and so we see her getting into writing a novel. We get some pieces of her work that she's written before, and we're just following this entire family, the parents, and then mostly Ruth during the latter part of the book. And it's one of those like pretentious literary books where there's a lot of deep thoughts and there's a lot of, crappy characters, jerks that you're supposed to be interested in because I don't know, John Irving says you're supposed to be interested in them. And then eventually we get to the end of the book and there's sort of some resolving of the tensions and the drama of the summer of 1958. So overall, I didn't really enjoy this book. I gave it 2 stars. I will say that it read very quickly. I was pleasantly surprised because I was sort of worried that it was going to put me in a reading slump throughout the month of April because it is a rather long book. It's 537 pages long, but it actually only took me 6 days to read it, which I was very pleasantly surprised by. The writing is fairly easy to get through, and I found it compelling enough to keep picking it up. I started it over a weekend, and I got like the first 300 pages read over that one weekend, and then I read less of it during the week, but that's par for the course for me. So that was okay. I don't necessarily recommend it to you because I did, as I said, only give it 2 stars. I think I'm done with John Irving. I read this one and I read A Prayer for Owen Meany, and I think those are the 2 that I should read, and I'm good to go. I know Cider House Rules is, very well known, but honestly, I don't really care about it, and so I'm just saying that I read the 2 John Irvings that I'm interested in reading, and now I'm going to move on to other things, especially since I've had this on my TBR for so long, so I felt like it was quite an accomplishment to actually get this finished. And when I was reading the Goodreads reviews after I finished it, I noticed that several people mentioned and it felt like he was repeating themes from his earlier books, so I don't really feel like I need to read any more of John Irving. But overall, I'm glad I finally got this off my TBR. Finally, in honor of Aussie April, I read an ebook, and I read A Free Flame, Australian Women Writers and Vocation in the 20th Century by Anne Marie Priest. This is a nonfiction book that I heard about from Kate over at Novel Nomad, and Kate is an Australian bookseller, and so I figured she knew what she was talking about when she raved about this book, so I went ahead and bought it on ebook. This follows 4 Australian women writers, Christina Stead, Dorothy Hewitt, Gwen Harwood, and Ruth Park. So, and all 4 of these women worked during the 20th century, and all of them were interested in balancing their vocation, as they saw it, with the realities of their day-to-day domestic life. And the book actually opens with the author, Anne Marie Priest, talking about the idea of vocation and how this is a deeply rooted idea in the profession of writing. Many writers talk about how they feel like they always knew they were going to be a writer, and they have this compulsion to put words to paper, and they feel like if they're not writing, they're not doing what really matters. And predominantly, the idea of having a vocation is also something that's been associated with the religion, priesthood and things like that, and it's been predominantly a male idea because, of course, women were expected to be doing the domestic work throughout much of human history, including today. Although things are getting better, it's still not 100%. And so, to say that you had a vocation and to say you deserved time to write as a woman was seen as this very controversial and new idea in the 20th century. And each of these 4 women were doing that and saying that and working on becoming writers and being writers and supporting their families through their writing. Of course, being women, they were still expected to complete their domestic duties, and there is this conflict between domestic duties and writing throughout each of the 4 women's lives. Ruth Park in particular was a woman that was writing because she had to make a living. The other 3 were seeing their writing as more of a traditional idea of vocation, but Ruth Park was saying, no, I have to write because I have to earn a living, and that's why it's my vocation. And so that was a very interesting contrast because the Ruth Park chapter was the final chapter, and so it was very good to see a different viewpoint on display. So I will say that I think I would have enjoyed this book more if I had been previously familiar with the author's work. She does quote quite extensively from these authors' works, and I've never read any of them. And the only one I had known about before starting this book was Christina Stead, or is it Steed? No, I think it's Stead. And that was the one about the man that raised children. I'd heard about that one previously from Adam at Memento Mori, because I know he really liked Christina Stead. So overall, I found this very interesting, but I don't think I connected to it quite as much as I would have if I had had previous experience with the authors. So that's all I've been reading lately. I hope everybody else has been reading some great books and you're keeping safe and healthy, and I'll talk to you again soon. Bye!